Great pleasure. Let me bring up the next speaker. Her name is Devora Rogers. She's a vice president of research with Murphy's Research, and she does work in every industry, some of the ones that I named: consumer packaged goods, healthcare, automotive, consumer electronics, technology, a lot in the technology space. A very dear friend. Please welcome Devora Rogers.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Good to be here. Thank you, John, for that always inspiring presentation. I had the opportunity to work with John for a number of years, about almost a decade. And he called me up once, and it was about maybe 5 years ago. So I was a little younger, a little less sure of myself. And he said, "I want to talk to you about confidence." And I was like, okay, this is my moment. He's going to tell me I got to up my game as it relates to my confidence level. I got to be more sure of myself. And he was like, "Shoppers are not confident." And I was like, oh, okay, not me, the research. And we did go ahead and research that, and it was a really cool thing to get to do. And I would agree that one of our biggest jobs, whether we are a brand marketer, a retailer, whether we work in tech, whatever we're selling, our job is to help people make those decisions more confidently. I would agree that that's, if we're going to be empathetic partners, that's our job. That's what everybody wants, right? You want to feel good about the decisions you make, the person you marry, the doctors you see, the choices you make in terms of your career. You want to feel confident. And that same thing applies to shoppers as they make these seemingly banal, minor decisions. They actually have a lot of neuroses over that. And I know that that's not just me projecting as a neurotic person, because I see it in the research. So anyway, it's great to be here with you guys today. I am going to be talking today about, I'm always the person that says we got to put the shopper at the center of all we do, so that's my job, so I will be doing that. And I'm going to talk first about some shifting shopper attitudes from my own research over the past year, and I'll add some anecdotes that probably go on for longer than that. We're going to talk about shopper health needs and the ways in which shoppers are thinking about their health and the food that they put in their bodies. And we're going to then bring this back to how you can put this into action. So that's what we're going to do today together. So okay, no surprise here. This is like super obvious, but I just want to say this. Shoppers are now in charge. They have the power. I am the mother of a very, very, very feisty 4-year-old. She's also a redhead, like that one. So I think that ups the feisty factor. And there's that point as a parent where you're like, oh, I'm not in charge anymore. Oh, I can't force you to do what I want you to do. That's the moment we're at if you serve shoppers. They have the power. They have the world's entire information in the palm of their hand. They are in charge. So let's just baseline accept that we don't have the power, that they have the power, and we now need to rethink our relationship with them. So that's the first thing that I kind of want to set as our foundation here. Above all, what shoppers want with that power, they want value. But we tend to think, and I have worked with many retailers over the years, many brand marketers, right? We tend to think about value as, what you pay and then what you get in return and sort of that value equation. That's kind of what we tend to think about. We tend to think about it in terms of money, in terms of the price you pay. And I just want to step back for a minute and make sure that we're all working off of the same definition of value. Because it's really important to this conversation. When I talk to shoppers about what they value when they shop, the number one thing is value. So 87% say value is the number one consideration. Okay, so we know that. That's probably not a surprise. And by the way, in my world, 87%, if you get 87% of a room or 2,000 people to say something, that's basically everybody. Right? The last 13% are just contrarians. Pretty much everybody, this is an important thing. But what is value? So if it's not like the price that you pay and then that relative to what you get out of it and what you'd pay elsewhere, what is it? So it turns out that it's usefulness, helpfulness, worth, utility, advantage, benefit. So let's just all take a step back and think of value in this way for just a moment. What help am I offering my shoppers? How helpful am I being? What benefit am I offering? I've done that exercise that John mentioned, that envisioning exercise, more times than I care to mention with him. And it's always a really valuable one because it forces you to sit and go, who am I? What do I want to be? What do I have to give the world? Of course, you're doing it in the context of your company, but it would be the same conversation if you were doing it yourself, right? Like having that existential moment of, who am I? What is my life about? So think about this value, and then we're going to hang on to this throughout this presentation as a starting point. Okay, so 87% say that value is most important. The second most important thing is they want to be informed. That's kind of interesting. So it's not price, it's not cheap prices, it's not convenience, although that is important. The second most important thing is I just want to know what's up. Just want you to communicate with me and tell me why, like tell me what this is all about. I think it's really fascinating that being informed is so high on that list. And the cool thing about being informed and informing your shoppers, it doesn't really cost much. It just is a little bit of a shift. So, first one is value. The second one is like to be informed. Okay, got it. And ask yourself, am I doing that? It's sort of like in relationship, I'm a big communicator. It's not obvious. And so in my relationships with my friends, my husband, my daughter, I like to kind of always be connected. I like to always know what's up, right? And so think about that from where you're sitting as a retailer connecting with your shoppers. Are you informing them? Are you sharing with them? Are you being transparent with them? Are you telling them all there is to know? Because a lot of them are telling us that that's really important to them. Okay, let's look at just a couple of other things that are important. 84% consider themselves bargain hunters. Okay, good to know. And different people have different meanings for what it means to be a bargain hunter, but they're looking for something that's kind of unique or different or cheaper. 81% are loyal to favorite brands and products, so that's good, right? Like even in this world where you can pretty much have anything, most people are still pretty loyal. That's good. That helps us not feel so under threat, right? Know that the majority of people, if you meet them where they want to be met, are going to stay loyal. Cool. 73% always make a list. That's interesting because they're preparing, they're thinking, they're being thoughtful, they're researching. Okay. 65% truly enjoy shopping. I will say I study shoppers, but I am not in that group. My mother is in that group. She's like the one that goes to the store on the weekends and enjoys that. But a lot of people do. And then, of course, this stat has grown so much. 55% use their smartphone to research a product while in the store. Okay, so these just give us a sense of the general landscape, and there's lots more where these came from. But it's important to sort of think about kind of generally what's at the top of folks' list. Another thing that's at the top of the list that I would say is pretty challenging, I think, for retailers and brands, is that personalization has become a growing expectation. And you're like, what? What do I, wait, who? What does that mean? What does it mean to offer a personalized retail experience, and how would I scale that? How do I, if I'm a brand, how do I let you customize your products? Is that you get to put your initials on the M&Ms? What is that about? But there are a lot of ways in which brands and retailers are doing this, right? You look at some of the shoe retailers where you can go in and get your shoe 3D printed right in front of you with the colors of your hometown. I mean, people are trying different things. Not all of the business models work, but this is, and by the way, both of these stats, when you look at it by generation, the folks who are younger, so Gen Z, millennials, their numbers go up about 10%. So it's a statistically meaningful difference in terms of their demand that things be personalized to them. So you could do an exercise. You could go back home and you could just write on the whiteboard personalization. And then just kind of maybe do it over a beer because, you want to hopefully get creative here. But, just what would that look like? I don't know. But, sit with your staff, sit with your spouse, and go, what could we do that meets this need? All right. The other thing to know is that while shoppers are demanding more of you than ever before, which they are, because they can, they themselves are also under extreme pressure. So almost 40% of people do not feel like they are in control of their health. That's a big deal. So almost 40% of the people walking through your door may be struggling with that. 67% say that stress reduction is important enough that they are like prioritizing it in their life. Over a third don't have enough to pay basic expenses. And you guys have all seen the data that shows that when people don't have enough money, it actually changes their brain, and it's really tough. It's really tough. And less than half feel confident about their financial future. A lot of them are paying their own healthcare coverage. A lot of them are saving for a major purchase. Many of them have had a job change. 16% have a side hustle. Maybe they're driving for Uber. Maybe they're delivering things on the side. This is a portrait of a society that is under pressure. And if we're going to serve these folks, we have to have empathy to what they're going through. And we have to think about ways to help them, that we can help solve some of these issues with them. Some of them we can tackle, some of them we can't. But the way that it plays out in terms of their retail behaviors, almost a third of them just are like, I just don't want to do it. I just want somebody else to do it. And by the way, that increases for men. Men are more likely to say, I just have somebody else do my shopping. A third of them say that shopping actually makes them anxious. And by the way, millennials are more likely to say this. Sometimes we tend to think of younger people, oh, they're freewheeling, they're fine. Millennials, John's right that they have been raised in an environment where all the information's available, so you have to know everything before you buy your avocado. That is anxiety provoking. So you've got a third of people coming into your store having a panic attack. You've probably seen some of them having panic attacks. You've probably helped them sit down and give them a glass of water, if I were to guess. And 67% prefer to shop alone, which anyone with a kid, or a needy husband really understands. Okay, so that's kind of the baseline. That's kind of the starting point for where shoppers are at in terms of their needs right now. Let's shift over and talk a little bit about their health, because it turns out this is a big deal. John referenced this a little bit in his presentation. The number of people that are focused on their health in this country is bigger than it has ever been. And there are different reasons for that. In some cases, it's because there's more information that's available. In some cases, it's because a lot of us have let ourselves go a little bit, and you get to a point where you're like, ooh, I got to bring that back in. The doctor's like, oh, that cholesterol is just a wee bit high. You got to bring that down, right? There's lots of different reasons. Some of us are on Instagram, and you look at these ladies doing yoga, and you're like, I guess I should try to get off the couch. Which it took me 4 years after I had my kid to do that. I was like, I just think the most I can do is go around the block. So let's talk a little bit about this and see what this looks like from a numbers perspective, because it's actually pretty remarkable. Okay, so of everybody living in the United States, 13 and above, 76%, or 3/4 of all Americans, consider themselves nutrition engaged. And by the way, we set the bar low on this. This is like, do you talk to somebody like once a week about your health? Or like maybe hey honey, we should probably eat more greens, which is pretty much the conversation my husband and I have repeatedly. And then we eat like a little bit of spinach one day, and then we're like, okay, that was good for a week. But so 76% of people fit into this category. So 3/4 of all the people coming through your door are thinking about this. And by the way, doesn't change for income, doesn't change for age. There's very minor differences, but it holds true. And then you got 68% who are interested in fitness, right? So heavily interested in that, and mindfulness engaged. And mindfulness is like, do they meditate or that kind of thing. But we're going to focus today on the nutrition engaged Americans. So you've got 76% coming into your store. And, I think it's fair to say if you want to be able to grow, hitting 76% of people who come through your door with what they need is probably going to be important if you want to expand your business. Okay, so there's a lot of data on this slide. I'm going to talk you through it, okay? So in terms of, this is top health goals, okay, that Americans have. And this would differ in different countries, so let me be clear about that. This is American, US data. Okay, so the number one, and here we've got the top, the dark blue is the top ranked goal, and the light blue is just, it's in their top 4, okay? So spending quality time with friends and family, number one. By the way, I'm very heartened to see this because I think Americans often need to take a page out of the book of some of their other countrymen, however you want to say that. But anyway, people from other countries, because I think for a long time Americans have not always prioritized spending quality time with friends and family. So I think that's pretty cool that that's number one. But that's interesting, okay. Number two, ahead of achieving financial success, managing my health, my physical health. Making time for my spirituality is fourth. You've got then reducing stress or anxiety. Like I said, we're a pretty stressed out, anxious group of people right now. Managing my weight's right there, and then my mental health, diet, nutrition. And by the way, I'm a little bit concerned about improving my parenting skills being at like only 8% because, okay, I mean, let's be honest. Most of us are crappy parents, okay? So we could all use a little bit more effort in that department. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at the items on this slide. And I want you to ask yourself, are you helping your shoppers in any of these? The ones that I've highlighted here, spending quality time with friends and family, managing my physical health, managing my weight, and improving my diet and nutrition, I think it's fair to say that pretty much, for at least those 4, if not others on this list, could solidly fit in a column that you serve. And what would that look like? By the way, when we ask people on average what grade they give themselves on all of these, we ask them to rate themselves on each of these as A, B, C, D, or F. The average grade people gave themselves, and I don't know if Americans are just hard graders, but was D. Whew. So either we're really hard on ourselves or we're we need to up our game a little bit here, okay? And maybe we need to help each other do that. These are top food attitudes, and I think these are really valuable. So 62% of folks, of Americans, say that they are concerned about the nutritional value of the food that they eat. I would agree that, like when I look at, my mom was a 70s mom, and I do think that 70s parents were a special kind that, I don't know, they needed to do better. But, we watched a lot of TV and ate a lot of TV dinners. But, my mom was not worried about the nutritional value of the food that we ate. She just wasn't. We ate whatever we ate. And, she would send me without blinking to school with a donut and never even think maybe sugar, I don't know. That is radically different in my household today. So 62% are concerned about the nutritional value of the foods that they eat. 57% love to experiment, which I think is a really interesting one that's cooking and food have become a hobby in and of itself. 54% pay close attention, go out of their way, 47% go out of their way to consume healthy food. You can see organic's actually not the first or second on the list. I know that kind of occupies a lot of space sometimes in the retailer and the grocery space. But there are other things that are more important than that. And again, these do not change in any meaningful way by income or age. So if you find yourself telling yourself stories, which we all do, it's okay, we all do it. If you find yourself telling yourself stories, well, my customers, they're older, they have lower income, they're not interested in eating healthy. Not true, not true at all. In fact, when I study lower income Hispanic, like millennial parents, they tend to do the most research and be more interested in organic and more willing to pay more, even on a lower income. So keep that in mind. All right. So these are kind of cool. These are food trends over time, right? So this is self-reported. This is, we talked to, 3,600 people. And in this one, we had those who were qualified as boomers, answer the question, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. And so, and it looks like the wording got a little bit scrunched here with the formatting. But what it says is every meal, so the first one is every meal had to have a fruit or vegetable on the plate. That's the first one. The second one there was a variety there was a lot of variety in the foods that I was served. The third one is I had a lot of say in the foods we ate as a family, and my family frequently participated in pop diet trends. Okay, so one thing that I think is really interesting is that the boomers are like, yeah, we had to eat fruits and vegetables. Those 70s parents that I mentioned kind of let that go a little bit, right? You see a little dip. And then now Gen Z is saying that this is becoming really important in their homes. And that, you know, the variety is increasing. Where there is sort of, you can see that increase is in terms of agency, in terms of the ability to have a say in what you eat. And you see now that Generation Z, you know, kind of starting with Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, definitely moving in the direction of more say, more input. And so that's important to note. And a little teeny bit of a drop off in terms of pop diet trends. So that's kind of interesting to see that and to see how that's moving along. We also see that in terms of, and John talked a little bit about this in terms of thinking about, you know, where is your share going? Who are you potentially, you know, having kind of cut out some of your business? So in the past, baby boomers say that they ate dinner regularly as a family, and there was a pretty significant drop off of that over, you know, a couple of decades. A slight uptick, but nowhere near where it was, so that's changed. Okay, good to know. People are very busy now. They have a lot of activities. They can't always eat together as a family. You can see a little bit more that cooking has become a family activity, which is kind of cool. That's an interesting way in which Americans seem to be starting to reconnect. And then you can see just the huge shift in terms of eating out at restaurants regularly, right? That's a pretty big shift. Okay, so those are some food trends at home over time. I want to dive a little bit deeper into nutrition specifically, because that's your business, right? And I want to talk about what that looks like specifically related to food. So when we ask consumers what are the top attitudes towards food, generally people say like, yeah, I more or less know the foods that I should eat to maintain a healthy diet. I mean, right, like I've been going to the same nutritionist for 12 years, and every time I see her, she's like, so are you eating your greens? Are you trying to limit the alcohol? And every time I'm like, no, no. I don't know why I pay her for that. It's not clear to me why I do that, but I do, and you know. So we know more or less the foods that we need to eat, and yet almost half of us say that our budget keeps us from eating as healthy as I want to. And a lot of us are saying that, you know, I'd like to experiment, and I do pay close attention. And we see that sort of that concern about the nutritional value. But you can see a lot of folks about 50% are struggling with healthy eating. It's like hard to like keep it going, you know, you gotta find the stuff, you gotta know how to make it. It's tough. So this is on the minds of a lot of your shoppers. When we ask shoppers to tell us what are important factors when selecting food, these are the top ones. So they're in order here. So healthy, number 1. Fresh, number 2. Now I will say this is among folks who consider themselves nutrition engaged, so it's that 76%, okay? Which, you know, again, low bar. So lots of people here who say that eating healthy, selecting food that is healthy is really important to them. Number 2 is fresh. So both of those before taste, both of those before value for the price, which is kind of interesting. And the last one that I thought was the last two I thought were interesting was convenient to make or cook with. Okay, so that comes back to some of that convenience thing, some of, you know, the meal occasions that John was referencing, and I'll talk about a little bit more. And then a quarter of folks say it has to come from a source that I trust. I think these are great news for you guys because you can win. You probably already are winning on a number of these, and there's really a great opportunity for you here to win even more. So when we ask folks, what are you trying to consume more of? I don't have the full list here, but do you know what's at the bottom? Dairy. It's really fascinating. You can literally see industries being upended, you know, as you ask Americans what they're eating more of or less of. I gave up dairy last year because I was having a little bit of, you know, stuff, and you know, it's really interesting when you give up like an entire section of the grocery store. It really changes your view on things. But most everybody's trying to consume more fruits and vegetables. We pretty much all know that we need to do that. And protein third. So despite the trends of veganism and vegetarianism, a lot of people are trying to consume more protein, and there's certainly a lot of research that shows protein's pretty important in a balanced diet. When we ask folks what they're trying to limit, there's a lot of commonalities. Sometimes the order switches a little bit, but what you can see is that boomers, across all the generations, they're all trying to lessen their sugar intake. Boomers are a little bit more worried about sodium. The other generations are a little bit more worried about soda. So just again, these are data points that help us kind of look at what are we looking at? What does the future look like? What do people need from us? And so speaking of what they need from their retailers, from their community store, the quality and freshness of produce, really, really important, right? So to see that at 52%, people say that that's extremely important. That's unusual. Oftentimes people are hard pressed to say, well, that's really extremely important. But here, 83% of people are saying that that's super important for their retail needs. It's one of the reasons I don't shop at Trader Joe's, although, John, I am becoming a German citizen this year, so watch it. You buy the stuff at Trader Joe's, and a day later, it's not fresh. So I can't do that. The second here in terms of is value for the money. So that's obviously important. That's not a surprise there to see that carries the products I need. You can see that actually natural and organic foods is lower on the list. There's other things that signal healthy over just natural or organic. So I think this is really important to center around that the quality and the freshness of produce is so important to folks. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit. I've no more data. I'm going to chill on the data slides. Let's talk about putting it into action. What does this mean? What does this look like? How would you do this? And I think a useful exercise when I come to these conferences for me, so I'll offer it up here, is I try to write it down and sort of kind of get some ideas going while it's fresh for me of how I might do this, what this might look like if I were to implement and act against this. And I'll give you some examples too as we talk. Okay, so let's go back to John's challenge, basically, right? Ask yourself, what business are you really in? I love this question, right? Even if you ask it as a human being, right? It's easy to be like, well, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a this, I'm a that. Yeah, but what are you really about? And I think that for brands, retailers, this question is so critical. So are you guys, what business are you in? What do you think? Are you in the grocery business? That'd be fair to say that. I mean, we wouldn't be wrong. But if you're in the grocery business, you're responsible for moving stuff and selling stuff. That's your job. Maybe that excites you, and that's cool. But there are other things to be excited about here. Are you perhaps in the business of health? Well, that's pretty exciting. That's different in the sense that it's not about selling things. It's about partnering with your shoppers to have better lives, basically. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, right, health is all that matters. Anybody who's ever had a spouse get really sick or you yourself been, it's all that matters, it's basically our health. So what would that look like to be in the business of health? I did a workout challenge starting in November. After 4 years of raising my kid, I was like, okay, I really, really, really need to go outside and put on tennis shoes. Really, now. And so I started a workout challenge with a friend, and it was really simple. We just said we were gonna move for 30 minutes a day, and we wanted to not hate it. That was our goal. Not hate it, move 30 minutes a day. And the bar was like also really low. It was like, okay, it's fine to just walk around the block and listen to music or have a phone chat. So I did. I took advantage of that for about 30 days. And then after about 30 days, I was like, it wasn't so bad. It wasn't horrible. I didn't die. I'm still here. I kind of feel good. I lost a couple pounds. Okay. So we upped it. We took out eating bad stuff, and we added, a little bit of high intensity training. And again, the goal was not to hate it. Anyway, I'm now on like the third run of this, and we kept each other responsible by sending each other text messages each day, like, hey, I just did my workout. She's in New York, so she's freezing her butt off every single day that she does this, and I'm like out in the sun running, which is great. Good life choices in terms of living in California. I feel really good about that. But this process of doing this was really valuable to me. It taught me, one, that I can change, which is cool. It's good to know. Even at almost 40, I can change. I can create new habits, and I can experience new things. And in large part, I did it because I had a workout partner. I don't think I would have been successful. She actually recently bailed on me, and so now I have not been doing my workout. So there's some real value in here. And why would I be talking to a group of retailers about this? You function in many cases as the center of a community. Can you create opportunities in that environment? I don't know, to partner with your shoppers to de-stress. Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to change your habits? Can you create a challenge that people can do together? Can you create a role for the store within this thing that 76% of people are trying to do? What would that look like? How does food come into that? How does working out coming into that? What's the role of partnering? What does that look like? And by the way, I want to go back and say, it's not only about losing weight or eating healthier. The de-stress part here is really important. A third of us have pretty massive anxiety, and we're stressed. We work big jobs, we have lots of kids, all kinds of stuff. So what are kind of fun things we can do? I know there's a couple of you in here that do wine tastings. Hey, I'm good with that. That's de-stressing. Totally de-stressing. So, right, think about this. It doesn't only have to be through the lens of, eating more spinach, which, by the way, does not de-stress you. Grab meal occasions, develop meal solutions. John talked a little bit about this. So important. As folks are busy, so here we are, we're busy, but I have to eat better, I gotta feed my kids better. What does that look like to develop those meal occasions? What would a meal solution look like? And is it maybe just about coupling things and on an end cap, or is it about bringing things together in the deli? But that's a real opportunity here, and shoppers are hungry for it, literally. Double down on produce. Funny coming from the woman whose daughter will not touch a piece of fruit with a 10-foot pole, but still really valuable. People want more produce. They know they need to eat more of it. Their doctor tells it every time they go into the doctor. And it's at the top of their list in terms of what they're looking for from a retailer. They want it fresh, and they want to be able to access it. So, evaluate if there's ways to do that that are interesting. There's some examples of stores that are, like pre-chopping vegetables for people, because actually it's because we've for so long have not relied on vegetables being, most of us, not being the center of our plate. Like, how do you prepare bok choy? My husband had me get something. I was like, I don't. It's just going to go in the fridge because I'm not touching that. Right? How do you actually do that? And can you create opportunities to have those conversations with your shoppers so that you're not just putting it out there, but you're kind of co-creating a way to use that produce, hopefully sell more of it. Featuring local vendors. A lot of you guys do this already, but this is really a unique opportunity, especially as you think about doubling down on produce. Are there things that are unique in your community that allow you to speak to freshness and produce and de-stressing? What would that look like? Who are those local vendors? How do you feature them? How do you make them part of your success and your story? Artisanal, we're seeing a lot of this. I think some of this has to do with the whole Instagram thing, where people can have this weird little business where they take a little bee wing and maybe not a bee wing because the bees are precious right now, but a little ladybug wing, and they turn it into a knit sweater, and then they post it on Instagram. So some of this is just sort of in the atmosphere right now, bubbled up by technology. But I think what we're seeing is that there's a lot of interest in, artists coming in. There being this sort of more artisanal approach after kind of moving back to kind of what we used to value. And we're seeing retailers that are doing this with a lot of success. So personalizing the shopping experience. So again, what would that look like? Does that mean, having certain things for your best customers ready? Does that mean, shifting what it's like to actually shop in the store? There's an example in New Prague, Minnesota, which I think is really interesting, of this couple. They had a kid who was quite ill, and they were both working, but they were kind of stressed out about the fact that they couldn't get healthy food to their family. And they were like, well, let's start a store. Okay. Probably many of you have had that moment. You're like, let's do this. I can do this. I know how to do this. But they ran the numbers, and they were like, ooh, we can't, on the income that we have, we can't afford to run a store with staff. So they were like, well, what if we just, I don't know, gave people cards, key cards, and let them come into the store on off hours, or whenever, basically anytime, let themselves come in the store. We'll have cameras and all that kind of stuff. And what if we let them kind of create that experience for themselves, and they could do their shopping, they could do it at midnight if they wanted, and we could allow vendors to restock and do the same thing. It's fascinating. You can really get creative here. It's not to say that's going to work for everybody, but I think some real value in thinking about how do you personalize for your community and for individual shoppers that shop you. This community one is pretty important. We saw that one of the number one things was spending more time with friends and family. I recently wrote a bucket list. I'm not going anywhere, hopefully, but I just thought I should, just get clear about what I want to do. And at the top of my list was spend time with friends and family. I was like, isn't that what this is all about? And yet, many of us are disconnected from friends and family. Everybody works a lot. If you live in Los Angeles, if you live in Santa Monica and one of your friends lives in Pasadena, let me tell you, 10 years go by before you see them. Not a joke. I see my friends in New York more than my friends on the east side of Los Angeles. But we still crave a community. I was talking with one of my friends the other day. I was like, do you remember when people used to have parties? Like, what happened? Now, some of you guys may still have parties, but we don't have parties anymore. I'm like, I still want to hang out and drink beer. And how do we do that? At the end of the day, that's about creating community. What role does your store play in creating that community? And a lot of you guys are probably doing, occasional events and that kind of thing, but is there opportunities to double down on that? And the last one here, which of course we can never lose sight of, nor lose sight of the definition of value. How do you hit that value equation? What matters to them? I've been doing research now for well over a decade, and there's a really pretty easy way to do this. Doesn't take a ton of money. And it's the same thing that you use if you want to be a good partner, a good parent. You say, what's working for you here? Why do you shop here? What would make you shop here more? Is there something you need that I don't have? And then you listen. And you do that again and again and again and again. The better you get at asking those questions and really, really listening, the more you'll be able to determine what your community needs in terms of value, in terms of helpfulness, in terms of benefit. So if you're not asking that question every single day, give that a try. And it's hard, by the way. It's hard to ask that question. I had a boss who told me that he wanted me to come back in every month or two and sort of ask that. And I would tremble before doing it because I was like, ooh, what if today I didn't do a good job? But it's the question you got to ask. We're going to have just a moment. We can do some questions. I do want to say I'm very empathetic. It is really hard to be in the business that you're in. I would agree that restaurants are probably only second or maybe first, depending on who you ask. Really tough business. And shoppers have really, really, really high expectations. I went into a Whole Foods yesterday. They didn't have cucumbers. I was like, wait, how can you not have a cucumber? That's like not having a banana. That's like not having sugar, right? So the expectations are extraordinarily high. And they do expect perfection. So, no pressure. Because they are ready. And the question you have to ask yourself is, are you? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Oh, I was going to take the remote control
Okay.
because I want to be in control.
Okay. Good.
All right, got it.
Got it.
So Devora, thank you for that. And so the data is quite fascinating. It's almost like we planned this so you got these freaked out shoppers, they're really stressed, time's really important to them. The phrase that you use, I didn't, was this idea of spending more time with friends and family. And then there was another stat in your about how attractive the idea of cooking together with their friends and family was. So there's a hypothesis right here that you can de-stress, you can bring people back into the home, they can save money if we can just get them to think about cooking and preparing the meal as an activity, not as a chore. Do I have it right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has become an enjoyable activity in a way that I know my mom did not enjoy cooking in any way. And in my group of friends, I mean, the thing that we get together and do is we get together and cook. That's what we do. And so I think that we see that playing out in the data, that cooking is a way of connecting. Cooking is community. So that means food is community.
So it's like to me this seems like, I see the data, I see how freaked out they all are, and what's also fascinating about your data is how you might generalize this to be just about millennials or Gen Z or something like that, but the data, these trends are across all age groups, poor, rich, right? This is this is a Western society family issue, right? Is that people are freaked out. I think if we did the same research in a lot of other countries, we'd see very similar results. But to me, instead of being a problem, it feels like the ball is teed up, right? So they're saying, I want lots of produce, I want fresher and local produce, right? I want a retailer that will help me feel confident. Food I'm passionate about, but I need to feel smarter. Help me. Do I have it right?
You have it right.
So in your world, if someone steps in and solves a bunch of problems, what happens to those brands?
I mean, they succeed, they win. People say yes. It is hard to start a new business. It is hard to be in retail. But we see examples where, I mean, bookstores is a really good example, right? So everyone was like, it's the end of the world, the bookstore is gone for life. And what do you know? Amazon started putting real bookshops back into physical locations. And independent bookstores in places like Asheville, in places all over the country, are serving as the center core of a community, because it's not only about buying the book, it's about all the stuff that happens in that store, the curation, the featuring of local authors, the connectedness to a community, the space itself. Absolutely.
So I think it's fascinating. So the bookstore is a great example of where the retailers had to rethink the role that they play. They become a community center. It's about coffee. It's about a lot of other things. And oh, by the way, we have some books. So I think they rethought with the business that they're in. Health is tricky, though, right? If you say, I want to teach you to eat healthier, wow, that means so much to someone. That might be reducing weight.
Doesn't sound like very much fun.
Well, it could be, but it could be about protein. It could be about, about gluten-free,
fats,
right? Right. So, but moving through a store, our stores have 30, 40,000 items in it. Like being a good partner and helping to be healthy. I mean, it's hard to pick a grocer and say they do a great job of that. Are there anybody out there that you say you think is doing a great job? You mentioned Whole Foods before.
Well, I'm not so hot on them right now. I think that they did a good job for a long time, and I think that there are examples of things that they're doing. At one of their stores in Brooklyn, they have this vegetable butcher, which they really stole from Italy. And I think that they're doing classes and tea making, and there's some things that they're doing that other retailers have done for a long time. Although when I go into personally, my experience is there's less produce available, there's less produce that's interesting to me, so I'm having a hard time with them. I think that if I were to pick a group of stores that is doing this best, it's the independent stores. He didn't pay me to say that. I think that they're connected to their community in ways that bigger stores are not, and they're able to do things, and they have sort of flexibility, and they can be nimble in ways that is. So I look at some of the independent stores that are doing this, and there's some really, really exciting stuff happening in that regard within these sort of smaller independent stores.
So I love that you said that. I didn't know you were going to say that, but it actually shows up in our numbers, right? So if you look at our stores, if you get a continuum, many chains got stores that are struggling, you have stores that are rocking, and a bunch in between. Right? If you look at our stores that are the most successful, and you say, what do they do all in common? Most of them have radically increased the size of their produce department. It is the focus of their management and leadership, so win in produce. Number 2, meat. IGAs do great in meat. So protein, for a long time, was bad. Now protein is good again. And now you got a lot of people coming back into protein saying, how can I use this in my diet in new ways? Man, is that perfect? If you got a real butcher in your store, that's an incredible story, right? That's in our wheelhouse. And then you get to deli and prepared foods. And I think this is the biggest opportunity, because you saw in my presentation, the restaurants have been attacking us, and they've been stealing shoppers away because of convenience. We have a restaurant in our stores too. If you think about what you would do with that restaurant, the grocery restaurant, what would you do differently about that experience if it was your store?
That's a question for me.
Yeah.
I have to answer on the spot here. No pressure. You know, I think about going into restaurants today, and I really struggle with it. You rarely get the service that you want. You're often like, oh, why are they so slow? You notice all the stuff on the floor. My kid starts freaking out. That's not a very fun experience. I have a chef friend who will not eat in restaurants anymore because she feels they're fundamentally broken. You know, that's a story for another day, but I do agree that there's an opportunity to pick up on things that restaurants were serving for a while and deliver it in the store. And when I look at it, I go, well, could I get in and get out quickly, get really good high quality protein, because like basically we like protein and vegetables, and could I do it without paying like, you know, the tip and the and I think that the opportunity there is really powerful, whether that looks like sushi, whether that looks like the vegetable butcher, whether it looks like somebody that's like prepared like 50% of the meal and I just have to take it home, similar to the like meal kit idea, but it's sort of kind of not as much work. I think there's real value there. I don't know that I answered your question fully, but
so if I take the data that you showed that talked about a stressed shopper, all the data about how a large percentage of them are worried about what it means to be healthy and what it means to be fresh. Mm-hmm. And if I could take those signs in that deli and say, here's 15 ways you can get great value, great food without you can meet your calorie goals without scrimping on taste, right? If I re-signed my experience to tell them what the partner we're in, and here's the irony of it, here's the stuff we make in our store. No restaurant could possibly be that fresh, because it comes right out of our store, right? We have the ability to have the freshest possible experience. But yet, you know, it's a deli, it's not a restaurant. And so as I imagine, as I listen to your data, as I reflect on the feedback that we get from shoppers, the grocery store of the future I see is this meal solution center in which the shopper is coming to them going, these guys get it, they know what I'm looking for, and they're trying to help me win. Do I have it right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you said one other thing, I didn't understand it. Okay. So what changes your brain? Is it being a retailer, was that it?
Being poor.
Being poor, yeah. So I've seen the same studies, right? So that literally, as someone believes finance is a challenge, they become stressed, and that causes health problems, and the health problems exacerbate, and where they show up is in diet, right? And so unfortunately in America today, and in many countries, right, poor are more likely to be diabetic, they're more likely to have health challenges than the rest of it. So I'm going to say a sentence, and you tell me if you think I got it right. So our last question is, if we said, instead of thinking about poor consumers as being disinterested in their health because of what we see, if we said they need a partner better than anyone else, how could I help them meet their health goals on their budget? We would win.
100%.
Got it. Devora, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.